everyone, my name is Wana and you are welcome to another edition of Culture Diaries. Now today my guest is a writer and director, and he's a very dear friend of mine as well. To be honest, everybody on the show is a friend of mine, but he's pretty special and pretty dope too. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome C.J Obasi.
Thank you.
Welcome CJ.
Thank you very much, man.
We have no one in the studio, but it's fine. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to beef you, but yeah.
I think as I said, you're my friend. I also love your work. I'm a big fan of your work, but I love having conversations with you. And I think the first thing I want to sort of dig into is looking at your work and sort of this element of surrealism that's been a common thread in a lot of your work, and and also like just having your own distinctive style. And I wanted to know for you when that started.
Okay. I always like to trace my, journey as a filmmaker to my roots in Eastern Nigeria, where I grew up in a very small town, one of these towns where pretty much everyone knows everyone. And because I grew up in a family where books were also a big thing, I got to get into books like, from like Stephen King and all that type of stuff. And so even though I had a lot of friends and I was surrounded by a lot of people, family and friends, there was also this need to kind of like, sneak away into my own world and kind of just daydream. And in those moments, I would draw parallels between the world that I lived in, which is Owerri, and the world of those books. So, for example, I would look at the small towns of Maine, in the Stephen King books, and I would draw parallels with, Owerri. And I found a lot of similarities, in that, on the surface, it seems like it's a quiet town, nothing really happens.
Yeah.
But underneath the surface, that's where all the darkness and all the evil lurks. So that kind of had an impact with me, especially growing up in the 90s, where, all of a sudden, Owerri, that used to be like this very quiet town, all of a sudden, we started hearing Otokoto, we started hearing people getting, abducted, we started hearing, bodies turning up. All of a sudden, we couldn't play in the streets anymore because our parents would be like, Otokoto will catch you or something. And so that kind of like shifted my mind because I wasn't going out as much as I used to. So I spent a lot of time by myself and just, I guess in a childlike way, trying to confront what it was that I was experiencing. So if I was to put like a timeline on when I decided I was going to tell stories, it would have to be at that moment.
And I think your work definitely sort of digs into memory, but then also imagination. Like it's like imagination within memory.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like most artists, not just filmmakers, I think whether painters, sculptors, or whatever, they try to tap in something that has to do with their childhood. And I think it's a very powerful thing because, as a child, the way you experience things in a more palpable way.
Yeah.
As adults, you try to put logic over everything. You try to, rationalize every single experience that you go through. Children just receive it the way it is. And I think there's something there for artists as well to try and tap into and just, learn to create by feeling and not just like through your head. If you try to put logic over everything, then it kind of comes out in your work as well, where it becomes more mechanical than something that should just be felt, and have an emotional texture to it, if you call it that.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. The idea of sort of the emotion that moves the motion within the art in itself.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to, you're part of a collective called Surreal 16. I think even your work also has, delves into like surrealism. But what's always also very interesting to me about your work is how, because it has more of an international reception, so to speak, there's always this conversation around whether, the work does not appeal to us. Because, and I wonder if it's because of the language that is used to describe the work. Because one private conversation that we've had is the fact that as Nigerians, like, surrealism is in our DNA.
Absolutely.
It is who we are.
Yeah.
And so I think because we didn't have a language for that, so for us it was juju, it was magic, it was mysticism,
Yeah.
you know, and all of these
Yeah.
kinds of interesting, you know, English terms for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
People then now see your work and say, oh, it's not really, he's appealing to Oyibo people, he's appealing to white people or something. Meanwhile, you're doing work that is completely rooted in who we are as the people, whether it's and how we live on a daily basis, both from the traditional to the contemporary. I want to kind of speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I always love to answer these questions because it's interesting to me how, you know, what we refer to as pop culture, a lot of it has origins in Africa. You know, I'll give you an example, like with my first film, Ojuju, which is essentially a zombie film. So the word zombie is, of course, a Western idea, right? But the belief system or the spirituality behind zombies are rooted in West African mythology. You know, so you have, like, you know, if you trace it back to the, you know, the transatlantic slave trade, where they took what we call voodoo today to, you know, the Caribbeans, you know, places like Haiti and all that stuff, and where there is a culture where, you know, people believe they can, their loved ones will resurrect and walk amongst the living, you know, which is basically the idea behind, you know, the zombie subgenre as we know it today. You know, so before George Romero and all those guys came out, and, you know, which I love, you know, because I, you know, I grew up.
The idea that we don't die, we multiply, right?
Exactly. So those ideas, you know, definitely became pop culture through those films, but there's something deeper than that. And so my thing is, you know, exploring that, examining that, and in a way just making a kick-ass film out of that. Because for me, I feel like one way for us to define our own kind of cinema is to dig deeper into what makes us us. So it's one thing to say, you know, and I'll get back to the Ojuju thing. It's one thing to say that, you know, you want to make genre film, but it's another thing to say you're making films that have the African DNA. A lot of guys already did that, you know, the Diobs, the Sembens, and all those guys. But I feel like as Africans, we never really graduated to the level where we started defining our own genre that is rooted primarily or solely in our own spirituality, in our own tradition. You know, so most of the time when we make films, people will look at it and say, "Oh, he's trying to do some other Western popular film," when it really isn't that. You might have a universal language, which is what cinema is, but in terms of the DNA and the fabric of what you're trying to do, it's not about whoever did it before. So the interesting thing about Juju was when it was made, a lot of people looked at it, especially from these parts, looked at it and said, "Oh, he's trying to do like a Resident Evil, he's trying to do a Walking Dead." And it's interesting because the Westerners looked at it and they looked at it and they were like, "This is not what we do." You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not what we are familiar with. You know, and it was such an interesting disconnect for me to just, you know, just observe from an outsider perspective, where there's a kind of pushback from here, where it's like, "Oh, he's trying to do a Walking Dead," because that's what they know, because that's pop culture, right? Pop culture is popular than any other thing.
And how we attach everything to just one reference point.
Exactly, just one reference point, exactly. So, but these guys who created that reference point looked at it and was like, "No, that's not it." In fact, there was a review by the Hollywood Reporter of Ojuju that said that this film puts all similarly themed films from Hollywood to shame. That's literally how a quote, you can go Google it, you know, Juju review by the Hollywood Reporter. So it's interesting to me to examine that. So on one side, we have that, obviously, we have people who always confront an outsider kind of work from Nigeria in that way. And then there's just people who, you know, who just wouldn't get the opportunity to see it because of just as simple as the way the distribution works in Nigeria. You know, so just and for me, those are the people that I feel like need to be reached. Because for those, there are loads of them. I mean, those people, they watch all kinds of films. They enjoy all kinds of films from all over the world, right? And so they don't care um, if it's, you know, Korean or if it's Chinese or if it's, you know, whatever. They enjoy all kinds of films. So if a quality film that says something comes out from Nigeria, they will definitely enjoy it as well.
Yeah.
So, but right now, the way the distribution is structured, it's kind of difficult to have those things. So that's why it would seem like my films will thrive internationally than here. So it's not of my making.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something I set out to do. It's just the way the system works.
I mean, I hate having those conversations about distribution because I feel like it's so repetitive, and I feel like I've had it with every single filmmaker about how the fact that, you know, this system claims that, you know, the audience only watches certain things and on all of those sort of things.
And they'll give you the numbers to back it up as well.
Exactly.
You know,
but then, I mean, again, I feel like I don't want to ask this question because I feel like I ask it all the time, but I will still ask you, do you think that we downplay the intelligence of the audience?
Absolutely. Absolutely, without, with no equivocations whatsoever. I do think so, because Nigeria is such a diverse place. You know, like it might seem like one thing works at a certain point, but then something comes along and just disproves that. You know, so I mean, I've been surprised myself a lot of times with the audience in Nigeria. So I'm never the type to just write off, you know, the Nigerian audience. But I would say that even if that wasn't the case, even if we knew for sure that it was only a certain kind of film that worked in Nigeria, even if we knew, which we don't, by the way, we don't know that for sure, because we've never tried the other thing the way we've tried this other thing. So even if, let's say we knew that for sure, that it was only a particular type of film, how long can we sustain that? You know, realistically speaking, as an industry, how long, you know, do we think we can sustain one palette? You know what I'm saying? So like, it's just,
you're preaching this,
you know, just from a logical point of view. So
absolutely.
it just makes more sense to just give an offering of different kinds of things to exist within the same space. It just makes more sense, you know, just even from a business point. And I'm not just saying it because I'm, you know, the guy who they say does the other thing. Let's not even look at it from that angle. Let's just look at it from a business. If you're a restaurant, right, and you have only one particular thing, people, sure, they will go to you because of that one thing. And then at some point, they will just get, you know, when they want something else, they'll go somewhere else. You know, so it's just, even from a business point of view, it's not sustainable. You know, so that's just how I look at it from.
I think something that's also really interesting to me is I was watching Living in Bondage, which you co-wrote as well. And I remember getting to the scene where there was the ritual, the occultic ritual happening. I know, and for a second I was like, this is so cheesy. And then I sat down, and then I was like, Anna, but if this was like a foreign movie, you would not say, you would not say the same thing, you know. And the next thing it made me start thinking about sort of decolonizing in the way in which we consume our own arts, and sort of the decolonization that needs to happen within us as artists. And I was wondering if it's something that you ever think about.
All the time. Because Western cinema is so popular, it almost seems like there's no original thought. So even if there's an original quote unquote thought, it will always be viewed from the prism of something that has already been done. You know what I'm saying? So like, for me, that's really the challenge. So even as we are, like we mentioned our collective, Surreal 16, when we created this collective, myself, Abba, Makama, Micheal, Omonua, in 2016, hence Surreal 16. And we had a whole manifesto. A lot of it is serious, you know, a lot of it is also like tongue in cheek, exactly. But the thing about it that was interesting to us, especially when we made like our official announcement at AFRIF in 2017, was how people were like, are you not being too Western? You know, that was the question. Are you not being too Western? And it's funny because cinema, as we know it, came from the West, right? It did come from the West. Storytelling comes from Africa.
Yes.
So It's about, I don't want to use the word balance because it's really not about balance. It's more about finding the most effective way to transmit storytelling.
Yes.
And cinema just happens to be this effective tool that is available to everyone.
Yeah.
And cinema is, it's a universal language. But our story is our story. The way we tell it is how we tell it. So for us, as in Surreal 16, it was just about what are those stories and how do we translate that to a universal audience? And that's how, we started, we worked on Visions as an experiment, and then we decided to do the feature film Juju Stories, which is in post-production now. So like, for me, it's...
Which we are looking forward to watching.
Yeah, it should be fun. So like for me, it's not so much about, trying to be Western. It's about transmitting storytelling to a wide audience. And I think it's probably only in Nigeria where people make films and they worry about, is it for the Western audience or is it for the Nigerian audience? Because it's
I never thought about that.
Yeah, I think it's probably,
it really preoccupies our mind and how
we think about that
like,
so much.
Who is your audience? Who are you making it for?
Exactly. Like,
can I just not make the work?
The reason why, and it might sound like such an artist thing to say.
Yeah.
But it's actually even more than an artist thing. It's actually a very commercial thing to say.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the Japanese, when they make films, you think they're thinking about, oh, this is for Japanese audience? Thinking about the whole world. Same with the Chinese. Pretty much everybody. We're the only ones who, but we are making this for Nigeria.
Yeah, because most people, they just feel like we're making our work and our work is for the world. The end.
Period. And guess
who we are is everybody.
Nigeria.
Yeah. So who we are is okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this also leads to more of a conversation into like our own sort of I don't want to say self-esteem as Nigerians, but I feel like it kind of dovetails into that as well. But I want to talk about Hello Rain, which is a project that you made, which I really love and was adapted from Nnedi Okorafor's Hello Moto short story. I think what I love is how a lot of your work always has this homage to old Nollywood.
Yeah.
Do people see that when they?
I don't know if they see it.
Because I feel like I'm seeing it and I'm laughing through and through.
Yeah.
And how you're there's like intertextuality going on in the storytelling as well. And somebody else might see it as something different, but I see it so much, and so it also makes me wonder why you're always taking away in terms of your style of filmmaking from our own traditions in terms of Nollywood or Nigerian filmmaking or whatever name you want to call it. Because I feel like your work is a constant homage to those things, whether it's to the mystical aspect of it or to the stylistic aspect of it as well, or the melodrama of it as well. I feel like you're constantly taking all these elements and just really saying like, this is what is distinctive about who we are and our style of filmmaking.
Yeah, because listen, there are a lot of misconceptions about me as a filmmaker, especially within the industry. But one of them is yeah, but one of them which I find interesting is that I hate Nollywood.
Why did they say that?
I don't know. So here's the thing I find interesting. I grew up on Nollywood films like everyone else. Some of these superstars are like icons to me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm coming up in the game, in the industry. I've been privileged to have some of them as friends, and I really look up to a lot of them. Now, there's a difference between the cinema, what we know as cinema, and Nollywood. And when you say this, people go, oh, you're trying to insult. It's not an insult. We created our own aesthetic. It's not cinema, and I'll say it anywhere. It's not cinema. Now, we have an opportunity now to define what is our cinema, what is Nigerian cinema, which is what a lot of us are trying to do. So do you think we're still
in the process of defining what Nigerian cinema is?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. We are in the process. Nollywood is the foundation where all these things are springing up. It's a great thing. Let's embrace it. Nollywood will thrive. It will be big. But there's room for other things as well to spring out. Just like Hollywood was the foundation for other things. Hollywood is not the only industry in the United States. Bollywood is not the only industry in India. You know what I'm saying? But here, when you say it in Nigeria, everybody wants to go berserk. It's the foundation that was, and even before Nollywood, there was other things as well. We had people like Nnedi Okorafor, Love, all those guys were making films on celluloid before then, before Nollywood.
Yeah.
So like, there's always room for something. You don't just put yourself in one box and then you beat your chest and you like, this is all we are. Why do you do that to yourself? Why, when there's so much, that can come, and that's just my thing, So I do appreciate Nollywood. I do appreciate what we've achieved over the years and where it's going, and I think it will thrive and continue to thrive. There's always room for that, but there's also room for other things as well. Other kinds of cinema, all other kinds of storytelling, other kinds of aesthetic.
Yeah.
Things that we've not even imagined, to come out of this place.
How have you seen your own sort of personal artistic growth? When you think of from Ojuju to O Town to Hello Rain to, I think, even Mami Wata that you're working on.
Yeah, I'm working on that. I mean, like with every.
What do you say has been your growth process?
Well, it's been quite a journey. I mean, I made Ojuju in 2013 with little or no experience because I had a day job. When I finished service, I was working in a company in Abuja. And then while I moved back to my parents' house in Owerri, and then I spent about a year or two just kind of shooting all kinds of things, short films, documentaries, just to get my hands dirty. I mean, I remember shooting on this I think it's the P2 camera or whatever, Panasonic, where you still had to use the DV tape.
DV tape, yeah.
And then you have to like code, all that stuff. I did all that. And at some point I felt like I was ready, and then I came to Lagos. And then when I came to Lagos,
our beautiful city.
Yeah, I came to Lagos. I mean, I was just like, let me, how do I get in? Because it seemed like, first of all, I had this script I had written called Old Town, which became my second film. But that was the film that I came to Lagos to make, and basically to find funding for it. And then nobody would fund a film how do I even pitch that? Like, it's a semi-autobiographical crime
noir
thriller,
film.
noir. Like, how do you even pitch that? So I kind of decided that we had to do something else. And then my producer now, who is my wife, we kind of decided that we should do something small, because at that time I didn't have any calling card. I didn't have any. There was no one that I could, just walk up to and say, "Give me money." You know what I'm saying? But with that, if I did something small and it became a success, I felt like that would allow me to have those conversations. But anyway, it didn't work out that way, but it worked out in a better way. Because after we made it, obviously things took off from there. And then, the awards, and then the traveling, and then, Old Town, and then all that other stuff. But what I realized was that with each film, you just get better, I guess. There's really no way to explain it. It's not, I mean, you can go to film school, which is great. I never got to go, but I mean, you can study. I think everyone should study film, even if you don't go to film school, you have to study film.
Yeah, I think you're definitely an ardent student of film.
Yeah, anyways. so you have to study film.
Yeah.
You just may not be in the four walls of a film school, but you have to study film. And I've studied film all my life, even as a kid, and then when I left my day job, I studied it for like 2 more years before I made Ojuju. So like, it's just like, and I'm still studying anyway. So like, it's just a lot of just learning and relearning. And with each film, you literally feel yourself grow. Just even the way you walk into set on the next project feels different. Just the way you look at the camera feels different. The way you frame is different. The way you talk to the actors is different, because everything adds. And it's just an organic kind of growth that you don't you may not be able to put a finger to it as to how in how it's happening, but you can feel it because you know you're walking each day more confident, um, with more ideas and more technical knowledge. Just being able to interact with your crew even better. You're calmer
Yeah.
even in the face of crisis, and things definitely will go wrong on any set, but you're always calm, you're level-headed because you kind of like you can see all the angles. You can play the chess of production in a way.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I would say in those ways, and obviously like in technical quality because we obviously have more money to play around with now, so the quality will keep improving.
But do you feel more of a sense of ownership in your voice and what you're trying to say?
Absolutely. I think with Ojuju, I knew what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And when I look at it, I was like, oh, wow, I really said that, But then when I watch well, obviously my latest project is Juju Stories.
Yes.
And when I watch my segment in Juju Stories,
Yeah.
Suffer the Witch, I'm like, I've come a long way, because in terms of just being clearer and being very specific
Yeah.
about, something, the ideas, you know, um, I think it's very difficult for filmmakers who are coming up to find the way to say something.
Yeah.
Only them can say it that way. It's not an easy thing to find, right? Because you have a lot of influences around you. You watch a Scorsese film, you're like, oh man, that shit is cool. I want to do that. Or you watch a Tarantino film, oh, I want to do that. Kurosawa, so many influences bombarding your mind, right? And they affect you one way or the other. But to really dig into yourself and to figure out how only you can say that, I think that's, for me, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, but that for me has been the defining thing for my career. And I think it's one of the great things I love about being part of the Surreal 16 collective, because when you watch, let's say, when you get to see Juju Stories, even if you didn't see the end credits, just by watching the 3 segments, you'll be able to tell who directed what.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm very proud of, as coming from this space where it doesn't really seem like directors have a distinct voice. So it's something I'm super proud of, because it means that I'm having an thorough vision about what I'm trying to say, and I'm the only one who can say it that
right
way.
there. You're preaching right there.
So,
and I love that. I love that word, a thorough vision, and you mentioned the word specific, because I think sometimes we especially when you come from I always talk about being Nigerian as an artist, because I think there is there is a cultural imposition on your artistry, whether you like it or not. And sometimes there is always this tug of war of how many people will understand or will get it. And you talk about this thing about specificity, and I feel like we are in a time now where we're realizing that your specificity is even what connects to people even more.
Yeah.
So you don't have to just be general for the sake of being general, but each experience and what, how specific you are is even really what draws people in a lot more. I don't know if you feel the same way about that as well.
I mean, I do. I mean, like all the greatest filmmakers they just all through history, pretty much, you can mention specific things about their filmmaking. Even the most popular ones and the less popular ones. You can say, this is what makes a Woody Allen film, for example, or this is what makes a Wes Anderson film, or like you can say those things. Can you say that about Nigerian directors? It's just something to think about. It's not a shade. It's just, can you say that? So that's the reason why when I say we don't have a cinema as of yet, that's what I'm talking about. So it's that ability to define our voice. This is our voice. This is how we tell stories. This is how we represent our reality visually to a large degree. And that's why I'll always, tip my hats off to old Nollywood, because they did that. They really did. They really defined an aesthetic and a style, right? Like you watch those films from the 90s, it had its own thing, and the directors were doing their own thing. Nobody was trying. I mean, they were all trying different things, like individually.
And it's all co-opted now as well by so many different kinds of filmmakers from, you know, across, and especially even in the sort of art film spaces.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, you know, pointing and homages to
Yeah,
that sort
because
of old,
I mean, even in the meme culture,
yes,
we still reference old Nollywood. Because it
yes,
was, they defined something.
yes, yes, yes.
So like
yes.
that's for me is, you know, that for me is what we should have taken to the next level.
So it's almost like we have to work backwards.
Really, in a way, because it's really about that authenticity. You know, when you just like you're very close to who you are
and comfortable being yourself, like
perfect.
in your skin.
Perfect. Yeah.
I wanted to very quickly ask you about, you know, coming from this kind of auteur mind space and then writing on other people's projects. So you know, you, as I said, you co-wrote Living in Bondage, you wrote the Genevieve film, you co-wrote the Genevieve film as well. And I'm in because again, being this very auteur filmmaker, which and genre as well, genre specific for you as well, with a very strong visual language, with a very strong voice in what it is you're trying to say, and very specific and authorial, as we said. I'm interested in what that does and how you bring that into working into projects that are not yours.
Yeah, it's really not, for me, it's not a challenge at all because I love writing, like I really do. You know, it's funny to me because writing is so hard. Like it's a hard thing to do because you have to really, because it's mechanical as well. You know, it's emotional, psychological, but it's also very mechanical. You have to sit down and you have to type out those words. So, but I actually enjoy it. And so, like, I define myself as a writer, director.
Yeah.
So, I can write on stuff that I'm not directing. I mean, I love to direct everything I write, but I don't have to direct everything I write. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
you would love to, but you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everything I direct is what I write.
Right. Yeah, of course.
You know, so but it's not everything I write that I have to direct. So it's really that based on that principle. So when the Genevieve project came along, I was happy to do it. You know, there was already a script that was in existence then.
This is Lionhearts.
Yeah, Lionheart. There was already a script by Micheal and Emil Garuba. So when they brought me on board, it was just a question of rewriting it and localizing it. You know, this is a family I grew up knowing. You know, just that family. Growing up in the East, I knew guys like that. I knew families like that. You know, I know that language. I know that dinner table talk. I know all that stuff. You know, just because
that's
I know
who you are. Yeah.
You know, so it wasn't hard for me at all to write. You know, and even write it in Igbo language because that's how those people would talk. So, you know, and it was, for me, it was also a way of showing that I can do something else. You know, I'm always, it's funny because the people, I make one horror film and everybody calls me the horror guy. You know, so so it's always, it was funny.
Why do they like to pigeonhole us?
Yeah, but it was something like even just to show that I could do something else. Yeah. And it's interesting to me because I love all kinds of genre. You know, I love all kinds of, including romantic comedies. Yeah. I know it's funny to say that,
well,
but I really do. I really do. So I can write anything.
You need to balance out. You need to balance out all the, you know, all the foreign language cinema you have to consume.
Yeah, I mean, I watch everything. I really, even like the local stuff, I watch everything really. So based on that, I felt like, you know, let me just show a different side of me, and it was pretty much the philosophy behind what, you know, jumping on that. And also because I felt like it would go all the way. Like I really felt it would go all the way to the Oscars. Yeah. You know, so. Yeah.
And now you're working on a Netflix project.
Yeah. Dope.
We can't really talk about it, but he's working on a Netflix project.
Yeah, I mean, you already know everything. They already announced.
Well, this is true. I think I also, one thing I really I'm very drawn to, that makes me very drawn to you is the fact that I feel like you double down on what you believe in. And I say this because So I've watched sort of the trajectory of your career, and I've seen how other people would know, it would show that, okay, what kind of compromises do I need to make? What kind of other things do I need to do to fit in or to be a part of something? But you just doubled down. It's like, this is who I am. This is the work I love to make, and you will do
Double down or not double down?
double down. You double down on
Is that
who
how
you
you
are.
said?
Yes.
My English is terrible. Okay, so yeah, you mean I'm uncompromising?
Yes, you're uncompromising.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and I'm very drawn to that. I think it's a very very strong personality trait, and yeah, and I guess it's the confidence of it that actually is something I really admire in you.
Thank you.
And I'm interested to know if you had ever had any moments of feeling like you need to compromise or you need to just move away from this thing. Some certain things are not going to work because you just go like, this is it, and I'm going to keep going at it, and you know, and I'm going to go to the ends of the earth to be able to achieve what I want to achieve.
Did I have any moment? That's kind of doubt, isn't it?
I suppose, but you know, there's doubt that is very like minute, that flashes past your mind, and there's doubt that actually makes you falter and shake a little bit.
I mean, I've had doubt like any other person.
Yeah, like every normal person, but
I've never felt like I needed to compromise.
Yeah,
as you would say.
yeah. So I'm wondering, where does that come from for you, though? Is that just who you are?
Yeah, it's who I am, but also I think it's also because I feel like I wouldn't be happy doing any other thing. Like, I wouldn't be happy working on something that I was doing just for, I don't know, just to survive.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I came from a 9-to-5, right? That was a very good job, 6 figures, good salary, good prospects, you know, nice cushy job. The kind of job that
What kind of job was this?
It was in ICT.
Oh.
Yeah, it was in ICT because I have a computer science degree.
Okay.
It was in ICT. Like, I'm not gonna mention the company.
You were a computer geek.
But it was, yeah. You know, and it's a good job. Like, it's the kind of job that you don't just walk away from, especially in Nigeria. But I was so terrified to keep being there because, I didn't want to wake up 10 years from now just, hating myself. And so for me, I felt like if I was going to make that step, that bold step, you have to go all the way. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. I might as well just stay doing this 9-to-5, and just earn a salary like, everyone else.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go all the way, I have to do it my way, my terms, how I absolutely without compromise. If it means starving to death, I will do that. That was just how I felt. But it wasn't something I can't ever remember consciously making this decision the way I'm saying it now. It was just like a natural thing that I felt like it had to be done. Otherwise, I would never be happy. Because I remember waking up then with cold sweats breaking out, like with panic attacks, because I felt like I was wasting my life not making films the way I wanted to make films.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, you don't come back from that and just start doing what everyone else is doing. You have to kind of like try to do it your way, And of course, a lot of people will see it as cocky and all that, but it's just for my own happiness, It's just it's as simple as that. It's just to be happy. It's not for any grand scheme of, oh, he wants to be different. No, it's just, that's the only way I will be happy. Mango, because I just kept thinking on my way here, man, I need a mango. It's the best thing ever. It's by Sufjan Stevens.
Okay.
All Things Go. The reason why I feel like it might not be the soundtrack for my entire life.
Okay.
But it comes close simply because I feel like whatever is happening at every point in time is temporary. And I always try to channel that energy whenever something bad is happening. When you're on a lone path, you kind of want to remind yourself that it won't always be, negative, or it won't, whenever it is. And even the good things, don't ever get comfortable. Don't ever get to the point where you feel like, oh, I've arrived, or, I'm doing so awesome, So it just kind of, it's a song that just, that kind of like, just reminds you of, what's important. The best piece of advice would have to be like a very recent advice.
Okay.
That I got from Moto show.
Okay.
Just right when we were prepping for the show. And he said something, it's just very interesting. Always get the coverage. Always get the coverage. And it's interesting because he's such a crafts person, right? He's like a filmmaker who is all about his craft. And usually you find that a lot of filmmakers who are all about their craft are not very practical people. But he is both the craftsman and the practical filmmaker. Yeah. So for me, it's just about, working in circumstances that are beyond your control, because oftentimes you have a vision in your head and you have it all planned out. But then when you show up, circumstances just mess things up, and then you start losing your vision. But then when you try to cover, you're kind of struggling to get control of that vision. I wish I knew that I didn't have to wait till I was an author before I start making. I'll explain this. Okay. So when I was a teenager coming up, I knew I was going to be a film. I knew, or rather, I wanted to be a filmmaker as far back as I can remember. But I didn't know how I was going to do it. So I had this plan where I was going to be an author first. If I blew up as an author, then I would have enough money to make the kind of films that want to. So that didn't happen. But obviously, I didn't have, people who were pushing me in that direction. Even though I never had people pushing me away from that, I just didn't have anybody nurturing that aspect of my life. So I ended up going to, go to university, get a degree, go for youth service, all that, when I could have just been making films. So like if I had like one thing that I wish, but I guess, everything works out, because sometimes I look back and I'm like, the way I think is as a result of certain specific things that I went through. And I don't know if I would have had that mindset at that time, So life works out in a funny way, I don't know if I would have been making the kind of films that I want to make now if I had started then. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because I wouldn't have had the wealth of experience and stories, life stories, that would affect, how I see filmmaking or cinema in general. So, but yeah, sometimes I do wish that I started earlier. Okay. It's been proven that it can. It's been proven again and again, and it's still a lot of the things that we do, how we dress, how we talk, everything, it's somehow connected to an art form one way or the other. It does. It really does. And cinema especially, I feel. And it doesn't change. This reality is not changed just because we're in the social media age, where we have TikTok and all that other stuff. It's never going to change, because those things will exist and cinema will still exist. And I'm not just saying that as a cinema purist. I really believe this, because I feel like cinema offers something that nothing else, no other art form can offer. Not even theater, which offers a great deal. But cinema in itself has an entirely different offering, that only cinema can offer. And it is the fact that whether you're watching it at home or you walk into, a cinema hall, those 1 hour, 30 minutes or 2 hours, you are in an entirely different world. You are suspended and you are hypnotized to believe whatever you're seeing in that moment. And depending on how powerful what you're seeing is, it will either stay with you or not. So it does have the power to change the world in that sense.
Thank you, CJ.
Thank you, Wana.
And it's a wrap on this episode of Culture Diaries. Big thank you, of course, to our guest, C.J Obasi. A big shout out to Source Productions for their studio. And this episode was supported by the Goethe Institut. Until next time, remember that art is